All right, we are live. Hello, YouTube. Say hello there, Duff.
Hey, how's it going?
Hope you guys had a great week. Hope you guys had fun. And we are here to go and talk about a few more things that happened, some repeat and some not. In the news recently, or just, the whole week basically has still been about all the gun stuff. And so hopefully we don't have to cover that for too long. But unfortunately, it's been in the news again. For anyone who doesn't know, Time Magazine has now released on the front cover, a picture of five of the Parkland student survivors. The only students on the cover are ones that have been postulated by the mainstream media to talk about guns and their giant feelings against them. On the Time magazine cover, it just says enough. So obviously, we need to go and end guns and all that kind of fun stuff. And of course, if you've been following the news recently, you guys already know all this kind of stuff. And them trying to just say all these things are bad. I know recently there have been more reports of the kids going against Marco Rubio and trying to give a smear campaign against him and saying that he just doesn't care about kids and stuff like that. And this whole debate is just needs to be over. This is just terrible. And then for a little side note, I actually had dinner with a friend this week. We had this kind of debate about guns, and it is surprising that there are so many people that uh, I guess more or less kind of lean one way or the next way. And what I mean by that is there are getting fewer and fewer people that understand or want to take part in a civil dialogue. Because I got a friend, like I said, this week we had dinner, talked about a gun ban, and I wanted to make sure we were on the same page. And he immediately felt attacked. And for part of the conversation, I tried to, like, hey, I don't mean to attack you. Let's just try to be civil. And he just kind of assumed that because of where I stood, I just didn't want to hear any argument on. And so it was surprising to me to see that, on because he's not a leftist by any means. He's definitely a liberal, but he was just definitely uh, his first reaction was, okay, whatever I say, you're gonna hate, and I'm like, that's not true. I want to have a civil discussion. So it seems like uh, that there are quite a few. I guess you can call them people on the right, whatever you want to say, that are also maybe trigger happy with getting emotional about things. So it's I guess all I'm trying to say is, be careful. We want to go and have a civil dialogue and make sure that we're all on the same page before we start an argument if there needs to be one. So just make sure that we're taking into account where we actually need to argue. But anyway, hopefully this stuff calms down. I really doubt it. I think the kids are still going to be used a whole lot, and it's just going to be really, really annoying. But Duff, I don't know. Did you see anything? Of course, I know we talked about this last week, but have you seen anything more about the kids there? Is that kind of died down where you are?
Yeah, no, that's not something which we're hearing a whole ton about. But here in Canada, we have had some mirrored protests. So there have been student advocacy things where students have decided to be in solidarity with some of the people in the States, and I think they walked out of some classrooms in Toronto, which isn't particularly surprising, but it once again points to the fact that American media is far more powerful in Canada than per se Canada's news media. Um, and it's a weird sort of cross border thing where it's like we are often more in tune with what's going on in the States than we are with what's going on here in Canada. And I think Justin Trudeau is currently talking about passing some new regulations for our own firearm stuff, but it's it's a very different sort of cultural thing. It's interesting to hear that your friend prefaced the conversation by basically saying, like, I know you're going to hate this, but and it's like, wow, that's assuming something pretty powerful to preface the statement by saying hate more so than anything else. It's like dropping a nuke right then and there, either intentionally or unintentionally. But that's a very extreme word to use because it's like, if you think about that conversation, was there anything that he put forward that you hated as a reflex?
Wow. That's what I mean, so do you think that the has the this feeling with his gun regulations, has that kind of been going on more, or do you think that the progression has anything to do with, the controversy that's been had in the US?
Some of the stuff some of the push for the changes in the bill are probably taking some cues from the United States, because as I said, there's a weird knock-on effect between what's going on in the States and what's going on here. Um, but at the same point, Canada's gun regulations are usually pretty much ongoing, and there's certain things which they target and try and create some sort of policy measure for. And a lot of them are actually pretty good, or just non sequitur kind of things. Like, once again, in Canada, because firearms ownership is not deemed to be a right, we're just more or less on the boat of, so long as we're allowed to have them, and so long as you trust us to be responsible with them, and you give us the means to be responsible through training courses and renewing our licenses and criminal background checks, we're okay with a whole lot of things. Because we've never been on the whole we need automatic weapons, although I'm not sure many Americans are, even though the media down the States seem to push for that, or push for that opinion that Americans are like, oh, gun owners want automatic weapons. But in the same way, we recently, within the last 3 years, had some bills put forward where you can't use handgun rounds in long rifles. So you can't use magazines which you can switch between a handgun and a long rifle. And so that caused a bit of a stir. But in the long run, it's just like, well, okay, sure, fine. So a 22 is still a 22? It's like, yes. And it's like, okay, so what's the differentiation? It's like, well, you just have to make sure that the magazines can't be interchangeable. And that sucks for people who have those firearms to begin with, but it's not exactly terrible, at least not from my perspective.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I mean, and hopefully we see more uh, debate. Well, not even debate. I guess more examples of things going on both sides. And obviously, we've seen how terrible things can be when weapons are used with the wrong people and that kind of thing. But we were I just thought about after the Parkland shooting, there's even a shooting. I think it was recently. I don't know if it was this week or last week that there was another shooting in Texas, and the shooter, I guess, shot at two students in Texas high school, and I don't know exactly the rank of the officer, whoever was on duty, but they actually were able to use a gun and take this suspect down. So, example of gun being used for good to protect students in the school and, reduce the amount of casualties and that kind of thing. Of course, there was no media coverage over that event, really, and it's just kind of unfortunate that those things can happen. So it's, a little bit biased there, obviously, and that's the great thing with the media. I gotta say, I really hope that things do change and we get more people to talk about stuff. And it would be really great if we could use this kind of tragedy to further understand each other and just not kind of keep saying, if you don't agree with me, I hate you. But it's unfortunately media likes ratings, and until that changes, maybe to be progressed as quickly as they should be. So that's kind of sad. But anyway, moving on to something that was kind of not good but rather funny, I guess. I was reading today, or I guess, well, I was reading today about something that happened this week. Trump passed a big package, big bill, and it's probably not the best idea. And not an expert, didn't read it. I just heard about it. I don't know everything about this bill, but apparently it was a lot of money involved, and it was apparently it's just a bad idea to do. And he kind of begrudgingly did it, I guess is how the story went. And then there was another story about how he didn't like it and wanted to veto it, but he already passed it. So it's not really sure what to make of that. He's done crazy things and a lot of virtue signaling on his part as well. Just curious, Duff, did you hear anything about this? And if not, I guess just generally, what is your reaction?
Well, I did listen to Ben Shapiro's comments on this, and essentially, it's business as usual. The thing which I think gets confusing is the idea that the president actually passes a bill. The president can be instrumental in a bill's creation, but it's the houses that pass the bill. And what's odd about this particular omnibus bill is essentially Trump greenlit it all the way through, and then after the fact said, hey, wait a second, maybe I should veto this. And what you kind of have to take into consideration is Trump loves to run his mouth after the fact, especially if he's not sure if what he did constitutes a win. And you kind of have to call him out on it. This is one of those things where it's like the president of the United States is one of the bodies within the American government. The houses are supposed to be talking about bills and acquisitions. The president is, as far as I know, largely relegated to things like national safety, national security, things that have to do with national interest. But he does have the veto power. But in order to use the veto power well, you would have to assume that one or more of the houses is against you and not doing what you're asking. And that doesn't appear to be the case at all. Trump appears to be very hands-off in terms of how the bills are put together. In fact, he says, like, they have to give me this stuff. I don't want to be directly involved with it. And then it's not perfect. So he goes, oh, well, maybe I'll veto it after the fact. So I would actually say this is a call for, it's like, Trump, you got to be a little bit more mature. If you are the king of the deal, as you have sold yourself to be in your autobiography, you need to be part of the nitty gritty. You need to be talking with people, but you also need to understand what's being put to paper. And in this instance, clearly he doesn't seem to, and he's waffling.
Yeah, it's sad, unfortunate, and I mean, again, not a what do you call that? The Trumpian, the diehard Trump fan. It's very obvious to see that this was not the best idea, and it looks like a lot of the hardcore fans are actually pretty angry at what he did. And so, I mean, of course, he tried to politically say, "Well, I didn't like this a thing," and it just didn't really work out too well. So hopefully, he can have his base get mad at him, and maybe he can make sure that, like, hey, let's watch out next time and kind of deal overall, because that'd be much much better to do. And it's just sad that things are basically going crazy in the White House as far as I've been hearing about
Well,
things. I'm sorry, what was that, Duff?
what's so odd right now, in a weird way, Trump and Trudeau have been mirroring one another in that most of the problems which have been cropping up in their particular leaderships have been self-inflicted wounds. So Trudeau has been going around the world and doing things which have made him look stupid, with no real influence from our opposition parties for that to happen. In the same way, Trump likes to be able to think that he's in control, but when it comes to people going, so how do you want to do this? His response seems to be, don't bother me with the details, just get it done. And it's like, well, that's tough because your party isn't a monolith. There's many different views. In fact, there's likely, and I wouldn't be surprised that there's quite a few Republicans who actually have more in common with Democrats than they do with other Republicans, and vice versa. So when you take the approach of just get it done, do what I tell you, you're going to lose a lot of details in the midst of what's going on, and you might not be able to act because when it comes to the backroom deals to get the bill done, you have no direct input, and then you're going to complain after the fact. So it's an odd situation that we find ourselves in, and I think both Canadians and Americans to a certain degree are basically asking our leaders to be a little bit more involved with the process and a little bit more transparent with what they're doing, not just making a demand or calling somebody people kind, as Justin Trudeau is wont to do, but to actually show us that they understand the workings of politics. And I'm not sure that they're doing that right now.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's so it sounds like you're saying this is like a group project from a teacher, and there's one guy who's not there at all, except for the 1% of the time he's there at the end of the class to say, "Hey, look what I did. It's good, right? Cool. Okay, awesome." It just sounds like a group project that's gone bad again. I mean, nothing really changed there, but I mean, yeah, this is bad. I really hope that he kind of gets under control and things get fixed. Now on the, I guess, a good side, I've been told recently, or I don't know if it was this week or last week, that Tillerson's out, and so Trump has trying to go and get a new Secretary of State, or if he might have already done that as well, and they are he's trying to get more people that agree with him, I guess, to be in his cabinet, which that's good and bad. It's kind of sad that, I mean, Trump doesn't know a lot of people to necessarily be to get to know them fast enough to get them onto his cabinet. So it can be hard for him to pick out some people and stuff. And unfortunately, they don't always go through the necessary background channels of is this person good. A lot of times it's just, does Trump like this kind of person, and it's which isn't too bad. Adam, did you hear anything on those lines there, Duff?
Well, once again, Ben Shapiro has kind of talked about that. The most recent guy who was appointed, he quite liked, but the problem is this is essentially workshopping by attrition. So Trump wants success, but he also wants to maintain his Trumpiness, that he is somehow the guru in charge playing 4D chess. The issue, though, is he will appoint people to positions who would largely be good with those positions if he was to be hands off or to give them clear instructions as to what to do. I think one of the more interesting ones recently, who was the guy? So he replaced his financial advisor and got rid of this guy who was anti tariffs. And then he replaced him with a guy who has historically been anti tariffs as well. And it's like, well, Trump, what are you actually trading for here? Because if you're trading for somebody to say yes to you, well, the professor who says tariffs are bad is not the guy you should go to. But Trump seems to approach his cabinet as, ooh, that person looks good. They'll be good for me. They'll work really well in my, group of followers, my cadre of followers kind of thing. And it bespeaks sort of a methodology of burning through resources as opposed to building them. So essentially what you want the head of your political party to do is to figure out who has certain gifts, how do we nurture those gifts, and when they don't do so well, how can we get them to treat failures as opportunities for future success. Whereas Trump very much seems to be like, do what I tell you to do, fix it, fix it, fix it. And, oh no, it's not fixed. Okay, you're gone. And it's like, well, that doesn't really engender any sense of loyalty amongst people following you, especially if you're going to get fired by Twitter or heckled by Twitter when 20 minutes ago you talked to the president and he said good things about you. You go in front of the camera and suddenly he says bad things about you. That's literally an abusive office relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's really, I don't know, I think also I heard on the Ben Shapiro show this week, he even discussed how Trump likes the chaos in the White House, which is terrible to have chaos in an organization that should probably be organized and that kind of thing. So it's the apprentice all over with, well, it's crazy, yeah, but you're leading the country. You want to be not crazy and actually do the things and stuff. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at that, Trump might be kind of screwing things up. But if you've heard recently, or I don't know recently how recent it was, Pelosi and Maxine Waters have been pretty, how should I put it? Reactive, I guess, towards certain policies. I know there was I think it was this week or last week. Trump visited the wall to see how that was going, and I think Nancy Pelosi commented that it was too high for illegals to get over, or something along those lines. And then there's also a story about Maxine Waters just continuing to say they've got a plan to quickly or because of the elections this year, we plan to take over, become the majority party, and then impeach Trump, once and for all kind of deal. So just a lot of craziness going on. But I don't know. Have you heard either of those two stories there, Duff?
No, I haven't really paid attention to that. The big question, which I always have with this impeachment thing, is the Mueller investigation has been going on for over a year now, and it hasn't really turned up much. So if a Justice Department appointed, FBI approved researcher and investigator hasn't proven anything, then what do they think they'll be able to dig up through a Commons committee kind of thing? So this whole impeach Trump thing is getting old, essentially because I'd say what factors would lead to an impeachment, let's say 25 years ago, the idea that you were sexually indiscreet with one of your interns or something to that effect, doesn't really hold water in our modern political climate. And the irony with that is that it hasn't held water in terms of, sexual dalliances in most G1 countries for the last 40 years. So the stuff which Trump is being called up on in terms of sleeping with porn stars In France, they would have laughed them under the bridge because they expect their leaders to have a certain amount of chutzpah, as it were. And it's like, even if we look at Italy, Berlusconi, their former president, was a terrible womanizer. So this idea that you can impeach people due to moral indignation seems to be a very dated concept. I'm kind of sad that it is a dated concept, but I think it's them trying to speak to a different generation of politics and not understanding that impeachment, unless you do something to destroy the overall welfare of your nation, you're probably not going to get impeached in the modern climate.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, going back to actually, since you mentioned that, I thought was a bit more news about Trump's sexual relations with the porn star, and I mean, again, I don't think that. I mean, okay, let's again, I say it is bad to have relations like Trump has done in the past when he's been cheating and philandering about, being very promiscuous. That is bad to do. That being said, no one cares that Trump did this. He was voted in, full knowledge that he did bad things with women and had bad relations. We all knew that. Now that's what I really it's crazy to hear Bill Clinton, like, yes, but Bill Clinton physically abused the women that he was involved with. Trump just kind of was hanging out with them, and when he got rejected, he just kind of cried about it. So whatever. So they're not good things, but they're not. Let's not equate the two either. And hopefully, those things get fixed. But I mean, it's a little bit ridiculous. And funny thing too is if you get rid of Trump, then you get Mike Pence, and I feel like people who don't like Trump would hate Mike Pence even more because, yes, Trump does stupid things, but at the same time, for all the wickedness that people have been putting on him since his presidency, he's not really done a whole lot of those, or he's not really done anything that people have been yelling about. Now, if Mike Pence were president, maybe that changed. I don't know, but it's just over top stuff. Is that kind of what you felt?
Yeah, and on that note, Pence has actually done a really good job of not letting anything stick to him in terms of what Trump's doing. He's been a very absent vice president in terms of actually giving outward approval for a lot of the stuff which Trump has done. So if Trump were to be impeached, Mike Pence, a lot of the stuff that went on with the Trump administration, they try and hold it against him. But I'm not sure how much they could tie him to. And the biggest irony being, it's like, if you're upset that this man was soliciting porn stars, well, how can you be upset at the man who refuses to have dinner with any woman who's not his wife without company being there, kind of thing, right? He does what Billy Graham did, which was, I don't want to be in a car with a woman who is not my wife, not because I hold any ill will towards that woman in particular, but rather, I would rather just remove any possibility of temptation. So you go from having a scandal-ridden but kind of everybody's buddy's president to having a very prim, proper, and morally upstanding person who's being president. And it's like, who do you think the Democrats would have a harder time contending with? Especially in lieu of what Trump is, to have the anti-Trump right after him would leave them with very little wiggle room in terms of shifting their agenda.
Well, yeah, because the other guy actually knows what he's doing, which is the main difference there. And yes, speaking of that, like we were discussing before, there was the runner, people trying to go and promote themselves for the next election, and I know that I believe it was on the Colbert Report. Oprah went on there to just have an interview, and Colbert just made a joke about God and had a TV guy and a cartoon god say, "Hey Oprah, I want you to run in 2020." So that's a little crazy there. But I don't know. Would you say that the Democrats are running out of good candidates, or they're not being very smart about how they want to go and I guess use their guys against Trump in the 2020?
I'm hesitant to comment broadly, but what I would say is what the Democratic Party is running into is they have a lot of long-term Democrats who haven't gone anywhere. And so it's the old guard trying to pretend that they're going to be the new guard when really there aren't that many up-and-comers in the Democrat Party that get any significant amount of camera time or speaking time. So they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot because everyone who ran in the previous election, or all the people who want to go for the Democratic nomination, are all known quantities who aren't really offering anything new. So they're hobbled that way because they won't be able to get away from who they are currently. The next generation of Democratic politicians are not represented in who the big names are at present. I think the big problem for the Republican Party going into the next election will be, are the inherent differences between Trump and the people who are likely to get elected enough to actually get Trump sidelined as a candidate? Because people will have figured out his game and said, okay, we actually want a president who we can work with, and not a president who we think is more happy to work with Democrats than he is with Republicans. So it'll be a very interesting situation to see how it plays out, because we could have a lot of regicide on both sides as the new and up-and-comers try and topple the established heads.
Yeah, it's again, I guess the good news is they're all kind of everyone's crazy, so I guess that's kind of good news. But it's um actually, and going back a little bit more to Mike Pence again. I read recently where I can't remember her name now. It just leaves me. Mike Pence's daughter and wife wrote a book about a bunny, and I don't remember the whole storyline to it, but I think it was A Day in the Life of the Vice President, which was a fairly decent book. And then apparently the media got a hold of it and just ripped it to shreds and just thought it was the worst thing in the world. There was a parody book about that on, I think it was Tonight with John Oliver, whatever, and they just made fun of the whole thing. And I remember before, Duff, you said you didn't really hear much about that, or maybe I'm mistaken.
So anyhow, this is this is a bit of an odd story in that people on the right, including Ben Shapiro, who oddly I've been name dropping a lot here, have been saying, "Oh, her book was totally apolitical, nothing, nothing that the Democrats are throwing at her is warranted." And I kind of sit there and go, "Well, it's not really apolitical because the story itself is about this rabbit going to the White House and seeing what the White House is like." So it is an inherently political thing, but it's supposed to be an introduction to sort of the mythology of the president, the mythology of American institutions. And in fact, the United States has a far greater interest in the mythology of the power of that office, the power of those buildings. The White House is actually a meaningful thing to American psyches. Whereas here in Canada, to a degree, where the prime minister lives is essentially where the prime minister lives. It has not much in the way of a wider ramification. So she writes this book about Bundo, who is Rabbit Bundo, the main character of the book, and the rabbit goes through and discovers what the White House is like. Okay, if you are the daughter of a politician, you're going to catch flack for anything you do. Is the book particularly out there? Absolutely not. But was it likely that this was going to get attacked? Probably so. So it's kind of sad that someone who has tried to remain out of the political spotlight, in terms of Pence's daughter, gets dragged into it. But it's also particularly vicious that the attacks have spread over into her Amazon reviews and other stuff. But ironically, this is where the Streisand effect takes part, where it's like, if you say, don't look at something, people are going to look. So what John Oliver did in releasing his sort of mockumentary novel, who apparently Mike Pence's daughter has read and actually thinks it's quite funny, has driven up the sales of her book as well. So considering both books are, the sales of them go towards charitable causes, this is actually a really good thing for charity. But it's just a really sad thing that everything which one side builds up, the other side has to tear down. But what are your thoughts there, AAA?
Yeah, I saw Ben interview Mike Pence's daughter on his show, and I mean, she seemed like she was pretty, was really happy to write the book and do the illustrations with her mom, and they were happy to make it together and stuff. So that was good, and it was nice to see she was because he even asked her, hey, your dad's the vice president, how do you feel? And she just kind of gave the answer of, he's my dad, and that's how it is. There's not a lot of he's not this giant glamorous person. He does his job and kind of thing. And it was nice to hear that when they were, I guess when he was running for office, they always get the chance to say, "Hey, we're gonna go do this thing," and then she goes, "Yeah, well, that's awesome." And then Mr. Pence would say, "Oh, hey, well, do you want to come with me to XYZ place?" And she'd say, "Well, and they always got to choose, and it was great for her to get the a chance to either go with him into a campaign or just become a kid and stuff." So it seemed like it was a good um, she had a good childhood and a good time living with in the family, which is nice. So I think it's just really sad that they have to go and ruin everything. And again, I've not read the book myself, but I'll take your word for it that it's going to lean slightly. Of course, it's going to have to, but it's just really annoying to have everything uh, tainted, if you will. But I don't know. It sounds like it's overall a good thing if sales going up there. That's what you said there, right there?
Well, I have a quote here from an article on it in vulture.com. And Mike Pence's daughter said this. So, in a separate interview with Fox Business Network, the younger Pence expounded on the importance of donating to LGBTQ supporting charities, which in theory seems very un-Pence. Now, this is what she says. His book is contributing to charities that I think we can all get behind. Here she's referring to, what's his name? Last Night Tonight, or Last Week Tonight. British guy.
John Oliver?
Okay. Sorry?
John Oliver?
John Oliver, yeah. We have two books that are giving to charities that are both about bunnies. So I'm all in for it, really. So I think that's a very gracious response. And as the article says, this seems very un-Pence-like because for one reason or another, Pence has been stuck with this idea that he was an ardent supporter of conversion therapy. And evidence for that just hasn't really popped up. So that his daughter can say, I'm all for raising money for LGBTQ stuff is excellent too, because it shows that you can raise awareness and raise money across party lines and across party rhetoric as well. So, good stuff. Great for her for taking the high road. And yeah, that's just something which I wish more politicians would do more frequently, but that causes its own problems.
For them to read a book, or I guess
to take the high road.
Yeah, well, I mean, are you saying because she took the high road, or?
In general, so an analogous situation here in Canada is we have the head of our national Democratic Party, the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, has very much been trying to talk around points of contention in culture, talk about accepting people, talk about looking beyond religious differences and looking beyond cultural differences. And he's actually gone to a couple rallies which his policy would be directly against because he wants to speak to people with alternative views. And he's getting shellacked for it because it's hard to live up to your own principles, especially when the media doesn't like people with principles to begin with.
Yeah, it's fair. It's that whole opinion and you must be on my side kind of deal, which is really really terrible and awful. But it sounds as though there's more. I don't know. I guess it sounds like there's a lot more just push on more fighting and more debating in the U.S. than in Canada. Is that fair, or we just don't hear it as much?
It's more so that you guys have a much more competitive media. We only have two major outlets here in Canada. Those are CTV and CBC. And essentially, they try not to go head to head with one another because they have very similar perspectives. It's not like, Fox, CNBC, NBC, and all this, which have seemingly very strong ties to particular government parties. That's not to say that our news media doesn't. It's just that they're a lot less obvious about it. And so we don't get quite the nastiness unless someone's trying to be more American in how they're presenting something.
Interesting. Well, I guess that's another thing that makes us a bit different here. We have all that. Oh, actually, and you guys don't. Well, again, that's the culture thing because we've got the different speech laws here than you guys do. So our debating is different, of course, that kind of thing. And actually, going off the trying to take the high road and stuff. Are you a fan of the Marvel shows on Netflix by chance, there, Duff?
I did watch the latest Jessica Jones. Yes,
Oh,
bit
and what
on
do
the
you think
fence.
of
Bit
that?
on the fence. I think Daredevil was probably the best, and they have kind of gotten worse from there. But what are your thoughts, of Triple A?
So I think we might have mentioned this before. I saw Daredevil season 1 and 2. Daredevil was great. I will say that when it was made and before I knew anything about Daredevil, and I've not read all the comics and stuff, so I should say that now. I didn't think that the Ben Affleck version of Daredevil was awful. I thought it was okay at the time, and I don't think it's a garbage heap now. I think that the new version of Daredevil is much better. But for everyone who says, well, it's the worst superhero movie, it's not great, but there have been worse superhero movies. I mean, they made a movie about Mario, for heaven's sake, and that was stupid. Um, but anyway, so the Daredevil season 1 and 2 on Netflix is great. It's very, very gritty, very, very not realistic, but it's great how they tell the story. The actions of the characters actually make sense. There's a few scenes in the movie, so this isn't really a spoiler, but if you haven't seen it, go watch it. But there's a few scenes in the movie where the bad guy clearly needs to go and kill somebody, and then he does. And you're like, oh, okay, well this makes sense why you're angry with this person, and then you do these things, and like, okay, this guy made you angry, and you good, yes, I agree, you should do these things. So it's very it's nice to be able to watch a series and kind of not have the you let him go free, why? Well, plot. Well, no. In this series, there's a lot of it could have happened. Like, there's a less likely it would have happened, but there's still a lot of situations make the plot move, not people making stupid decisions make the plot move. That being said, I watched the first season of Jessica Jones. That was okay. I kind of got annoyed with how depressing she was the whole entire time. That got annoying, and I didn't like the fact that, for example, in Daredevil, they kind of explained more or less how Daredevil became Daredevil. They kind of just threw Jessica Jones in there in season 1, saying, "Hey, she has powers and does stuff, and just isn't in bed all the time." So for an origin series for Jessica Jones, which is what I thought I was going to run into, it didn't really do that. I've been told that season 2, it's much more how she became that, which I kind of was hoping for season 1 about, but whatever. And then you look at the other Marvel shows there. Luke Cage was all right. I didn't know a lot about him, and honestly, Luke, he's a cool character. I mean, yes, he's bulletproof, but he's not really uh, I don't. I mean, he's a superhero. Yes, he just he's bulletproof. He doesn't do a whole lot. Really, and a lot of the first season is just political stuff, which I mean, I kind of watch Netflix to not be in political mindset. And then there was Iron Fist, and that was awful. But the Defenders were okay. And I've been told, because I've even watched the trailer for season 2, and it talked a lot about just the origin stuff. But I've been told from my friends that there's a lot of scenes and scenarios in Jessica Jones season 2 that are just basically talking about, women are the best, the guys can't talk, it's, objectifying women and men by women and men and stuff. So it seems like it takes a lot of the things we don't like men doing and making women do the things that they don't like men doing, but because women are doing it, it's okay. Again, I haven't really seen much of the show for season 2 yet, and I don't know if it will or not yet. But I don't know. What have you thought so far, there, Duff?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things which I had heard about it, that it was hashtag Me Too before hashtag Me Too was a thing. And I actually, for Jessica Jones season 2, so some spoilers, so put on your spoiler caps. There's some stuff which is trying to address who can you believe and when, and who do you listen to and when, and why is it that if you're X person in this situation, people won't listen to you, whereas if you're Y person in this situation, they will. Um, the the irony in those types of plot devices, though, is if the person through their own devices proves that they're better than the person's assumption, um, then sorry, isn't that illustrating that we as individuals can overcome society's problems with us? And if that's so, then maybe what we need to do is work on giving individuals, not people who have been burdened by, let's say, ethnicity, culture, XYZ factors, but the individuals themselves, the room to try and pursue what they want to do, which ironically sounds a lot like the American dream. So the the problem with shows like Jessica Jones is they try to raise awareness of oh, these people are treated poorly, or maybe you should listen to these people more, all of which are good things. But the solution which they give, they wouldn't be happy with from the outset. So if you were to say, in terms of racial politicking, well, let's just make laws so that everyone is treated equally and we leave them to their own devices, people would be like, oh my God, that's terrible. Whereas if you were to make laws that made everybody's differences unassailable and therefore they had to overcome their own cultural inhibitions, they'd be like, oh, see, that's great. But it's like, but in both cases, the individual working to overcome obstacles is the thing or the takeaway message that you should be looking at. So why is it that it has to be packaged in a certain way and not addressed at the beginning, but rather at the end? So it leads to a sort of an odd story, because if these people just acted with each other in the season as if they treated each other with respect and that they believed that everyone had the ability to get better and that if we just listened to one another, then you wouldn't have a problem. Yet, that's the very thing which they're advocating for in the midst of all this, which makes it a less compelling story. But I would love to hear what I just said in the playback, because I'm not sure I made any sense.
It happens sometimes. I totally understand where you're coming from there. So I guess are you since I've not seen it, are you saying go watch it, or maybe this is time to skip, or like what is your I guess overall good bad other review for the series?
I think it was stronger than season one. Um, Now, in terms of the Marvel Netflix shows, Daredevil season one and two are my favorites. Jessica Jones 2 is now in third spot. Defenders Jessica Jones 1, Luke Cage, and then at the bottom is Iron Fist.
Okay, well, I will agree with Daredevil. I will not sure how I feel about Jessica Jones yet, but Defenders is definitely up there, and I agree. Luke Cage and Iron Fist. I don't even Iron Fist doesn't even make the list. I don't. No, that's stupid. He was. Oh, it was so bad. It was so awful. And he actually had a power. That's what pisses me off. He's the one guy who actually has a magical thing, and he's a baby and a crybaby the whole time. The only other person who has the who's trained, if you will, is Daredevil, and everyone else is kind of like had a science experiment happen to them. Like, oh, well, you were blah blah. Like, this is just it's such a waste. It's so sad. It's the I don't know. I guess could would it make sense to say that Daredevil is the kind of Batman version of the Marvel heroes? Does that think that's fair to say?
On the small screen, yeah. The problem is there's way too many Marvel heroes which you could say are analogous to Batman. But what they did well with Daredevil is they get him to grow into his persona, but you actually like Matt. Matt's the good guy. You see his struggles and why he does what he does, even when he makes bad decisions. You can empathize with him, and that's something which is missing from a lot of the characters. It's like even Luke Cage, who I want to like, is sort of given to us as this tower of virtue, and it doesn't make him relatable. It's like he's a hero. Look how heroic he is, and it's like, but I want to know what he's like, because in Jessica Jones, when we first introduced him, he's clearly someone who has demons, but we haven't seen how he's dealt with them. Whereas with Matt, we do get to see how he deals with them, and that makes him a more relatable character, or at least in my case.
Would you say that's the reason why there's a lot of hate towards Iron Fist?
Um, yeah, a lot of hate on a lot of levels, and it didn't help that the actor who they chose and the fact that they're using a wushu style in sort of a hard combat universe um, doesn't really jive. It breaks immersion. It's kind of uncanny valley like no other. Whereas what I loved about Daredevil is, sure, he does the kickflip stuff, but a lot of what he's doing looks like really strategic fighting. If he's fighting multiple people, he's moving all the time in a believable way. He's not turning into blocks. And that's one thing I hate about the choreography for Iron Fist. It's like, it's as if Iron Fist knows where the next punch is coming from. And it's like, well, he shouldn't really. Like, and the fact that he has to do a dance move every time he fights, or engages in a series of attacks or defenses, it's like, this isn't believable. This is why MMA guys, or that MMA guy in China, is systematically seeking out practitioners of ancient martial arts and destroying them, because the Flash doesn't actually help you much in a fight or die situation.
That's true. Well, I mean, and going past the martial arts aspect, this is a bit of a divergent, but going past the fighting style, I mean, the character itself, though, I imagine you were annoyed with that with him as a character, right?
With the spin that they gave him, yes. I've never been a huge fan of Iron Fist comics in general, but to make him such an innocent, even though he said, "Oh yeah, I had to fight in basically black market fights in China in order to make money to get to the States," and he's just so innocent on so many levels. It's just like, no, this doesn't make sense. Sure, you could say that he's a very introspective guy and he's learned how to meditate and he focuses on a lot of his problems by working them through internally. But we don't get that sense of maturity from how the actor was asked to portray Danny Rand. And as you say, he comes across as a whiny little boy most of the time. And it's like, that's not relatable either.
Yeah, well, and I said, I mean, the I think the initial start of the series was okay, but uh the more he continues on to say, okay, and this happened to me, he's kind of very just focused on one thing. Here's my mission. Here's everything I want to do. Blah blah blah. And if things don't go his way, he just goes, well, it's not good. This is not how it's planned. You know, it's got to be this way. You know, I am the immortal Iron Fist, and I'm like, okay, I get it. And then he just kept going on that, and it was very I mean, I almost say One Little Girl. It was just very, very stupid, and a lot of decisions he made. I'm like, okay, I agree with you with the fact that a lot of times when Daredevil or Luke Cage or even maybe Jessica Jones would say, I've got to make this decision. I don't want to do it, but you know, I'm struggling with the decision I'm making now. I don't know if it's the right one. I'm gonna make it. It might be wrong. It might be good, but you know, I'm gonna try and see what's gonna happen. Dane was very much, well, that's not really good. I shouldn't do that. He walked away, and then it could have been a great or bad one. And I'm like, no, you're it's a knee jerk reaction, and you're stupid, and it's kind of very. I don't know. He was a very frustrating character to watch because it was just
Yeah.
very.
And there's a problem just with his physicality as well. Finn Jones as the actor is a very slight guy, and you have this guy with a basically a hippie beard and big hair doing this type of fighting, and it's just like, okay, I can't believe that him hitting me would actually hurt that much,
Yeah,
especially not that way that he's doing it. And then what they did with Colleen Wing, his sidekick, that woman is a great actress. I liked her to a degree in Game of Thrones and some of the other stuff she's been in, but they shouldn't have picked her for a hardcore martial arts position because it's like, if it's hard to believe Finn Jones kicking somebody's butt, it's quadruply hard to believe her when she's doing it. And it shows some sort of misunderstanding. Something got lost between Daredevil season 2 and Iron Fist because the actress who they got to play Elektra is very believable as a martial arts expert. She's very strategic in how she fights, and she's also willing to swap partners with Daredevil. So in the show, in several instances when they're fighting together, if there's somebody who's too big for her to fight, she swaps with Daredevil for Daredevil to beat him down while she takes out the next person or sneaks around behind the guy and gets him from behind. So it's like, that is, you know, intelligent choreography, and it shows that the characters are intelligent and about how they fight as well. Whereas Colleen Wing can run around downtown New York with a sword, and the police are just like, yeah, just let her do what she wants. Okay.
I I definitely agree. I think that the one and to add on to that, I think there were a few fights that were really cool about how the one thing I liked about Daredevil is he knows a lot of martial arts, and the one thing I liked about Elektra was the fact that she wasn't the strongest, but she used her flexibility a lot to her advantage because she's very fast and she's very flexible. Daredevil is just kind of a uh, all around kind of fighter, and and I like that how I agree they use their advantages and disadvantages and kind of like, you know, okay, well, I'm gonna take on these kind of guys here, and she was sneaky, she was just very athletic, and that's how she, you know, figured out how to do things. And of course, I also enjoyed the fact of, I think it was season one, Daredevil fought I can't remember the guy's name. It was like a 7 minute fight, and it was crazy. And Daredevil got his ass kicked, and at the very end of it, they got lucky. And I think there was some flame thing, but like it was cool because you saw he got tired, he got beat up. He's like he took pain. He gets like, oh hey, you're not this invincible person. You are going to be injured in some fashion, which was nice to see, as opposed to seeing Iron Fist kind of like, all right, last second, boom, and like I'm just gonna wreck everything. And I'm like, you should open with the Iron Fist. Just saying that might be a great little move to kind of like, all right, hey, by the way, boom, and it's over and stuff. So it's
Yeah. With Daredevil, you're referring to the villain Nobu.
or I
Uh,
think that's his name. Yeah.
and when he fought Nobu, what killed me with Defenders is they bring in that guy who they say was Nobu's master, and it's like this guy is not nearly as badass as Nobu. Like, sure, sometimes Nobu's wearing a ninja outfit, so we can't tell if it's the actual actor who's doing it all. But he seriously threatened Daredevil. All we see with the replacement in what is it called in Defenders is this guy. They tell us, oh, he's even worse than Nobu. He like tortures his victims for so long, and it's like, well, no, don't tell us that he's a badass. Show us that he's a badass, and they didn't, and that's where it fell short. And it's like same with Colleen Wing. We're told she's a badass all the time, and then we watch how she fights, and it's like, I swear I could feel the wind off that one, but she missed the guy who she was trying to kick by 3 feet. It's like, now, sure, stage acting, but in Daredevil, you don't really get the idea that the guy's missing by a half a foot when he's trying to kick somebody. It looks like he hit him and it hurt.
That's true. Well, also the one nice thing about Daredevil too is, like I said, when he gets hit and he gets knocked out, it's like you have that, oh god, he's down, and it's like, oh wait, he got back up again. It's gonna be great. As opposed to it just seemed as though every time Danny was like injured, like, okay, I'm gonna cry, and I'm like, you can. You look like you're really, really weak, and you're just gonna lie there and stuff. And well, I know I've got all this money, and I just it's not fair, and then whatever, and I'm gonna whatever, and I'm like, so it's also very annoying to see the fact of like, what's his face? I can't remember the character's name now. When Daredevil is going through the tough time, and he's, what, okay, this is how it's gonna be, and it's just interesting to compare the lifestyle of Daredevil to Danny Rand. Say, well, Danny has stuff, and he's just all he sees is the bad, and all Daredevil tries is, you know what, I don't know if I'm right, but I'm gonna attempt what I can do and try to be the better person here. So it was just very. I agree. I hope that they, get. I mean, they can't replace the guy now, but I wish that they would make it more believable, realistic, and stuff, or maybe have him as more of a sidekick role for Defenders 2 if that ever happens. That'd be nice to do and kind of thing. But that's the. I mean, a little bit of a side note there. That's why I don't know if you've seen many of the new movies now, but going back to DC, I know that Justice League movie wise has been doing terrible. However, the DC TV series has been doing very well. I don't know if you're into any of those movies or shows there, Duff.
No, I kind of gave up on DC after at least the on-screen universe after Nolan left. But I do like a lot of the animated films which DC has been putting out. I think they're of pretty good quality. In fact, I was so disappointed with Suicide Squad because they did an animated movie called Escape from Arkham, which was all about the Suicide Squad, and they did the Suicide Squad 100 times better than what DC ended up doing in their live-action movie.
Didn't they make an actual Suicide Squad movie too?
Yep, that is being released, I think, this month, kind of thing. Yeah.
Because I think I saw. I don't remember if it was called. I saw a cartoon movie, but and it was basically Suicide Squad, but maybe it was the birth of it, and I saw that and I go, oh, this is really cool to see. And then I saw the movie in that live action. I'm like, no, you guys missed the ball entirely. That's what, and which was sad because I mean, you screwed up a movie with Will Smith and Margot Robbie. How do you do that? Like, if it were just fighting, I might have been like, okay, this isn't bad. But like, it was just, oh, it was bad. It was terrible, awful, horrible, and just doing. And then I don't know if well, then I take it you didn't see Justice League then, right?
No, I have yet to see Justice League.
It was way too long for what it needed to be, and spoiler alert, everything goes to hell at the very end. Superman saves the day. That is the entire movie in about 5 minutes.
Yep.
No one can beat Steppenwolf, and then at the last second, Superman goes, okay, sneezes, and he just destroys Steppenwolf. So it's extremely boring. And there's no, and the thing that kills me too is, again, if you're a DC comics, I've not read all of them, but from the cartoon movies, I understand that Cyborg is the last one to join because he saves the Justice League from their worst enemies, and I think it's called Justice League, the Justice League of Doom, and it's all about Batman trying to make safety precautions against every one of the team members in case they go rogue. But Cyborg isn't on the team yet, so he actually saves the team from themselves. Well, in the Justice League movie, it was just what? It didn't make any sense at all. So it's I would, again, if you haven't seen that, Duff, I would definitely watch that that stuff. And it sounds like you've been up to date with more recent DC cartoons.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I've been following. I love DC's animated stuff. I have for a long time. I find their animated universe way better than their live action universe. What's funny about that particular movie that you brought up with Cyborg in Doom, it was a spin-off of the comic arc called Tower of Babel, where essentially Batman has planned ways of incapacitating everybody, and those plans are stolen. So it's a bit of a rehash of that. But what I also have really liked about the Justice League ones that they've done recently is they portray Wonder Woman in a way that I think she makes sense. Like she actually feels like a warrior. Superman, they have the luxury of having the voice actors for Batman and Superman who are quite good. And they also have the nostalgia factor of having the voice actors from the 1990s and early 2000s animated series, which, you know, are near and dear to my nerd heart. But with that being said, I didn't really like Flashpoint, the animated series, sorry, the animated movie that they did based off of that. That one felt like a bit of a miss to me, but oh well, they can't all be winners.
That's fair. Well, I mean, that's why I think that and to be fair, so the movies have been terrible. The TV show, because they've got what they've got the Flash, Arrow, the DC Heroes of Tomorrow, Supergirl,
Black Lightning.
I've never seen that. I didn't. What's that about?
It's about a superhero who can literally generate lightning. And he's an odd hero in the comic continuity because he's supposed to be a quasi mentor to the hero Static Shock.
I was gonna say that sounds like a lot like Static Shock.
Yeah, and I like Static Shock more than I liked Black Lightning. So yeah, they're just trying to get as much of their intellectual property out there, trying to, you know, finance it as much as they can. Sometimes they do it well, sometimes they don't do it well. I'm not particularly a big fan of any of the made-for-TV series. I think you can get away with Netflixy stuff because hour-long episodes in a short season make for a much better and more compelling experience than 24 episodes, only 12 of which have to do with main story continuity if you're lucky.
That's fair. A lot of them are fluff and other stories that we don't really care about. Story arcs about just stupid things. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, at least the DC TV series has done better with Justice League stuff. Unfortunately, a lot of, like, for example, Arrow seasons 1 to 3, even 4 a little bit were decent. And then then the main character kind of became a wuss, so we became very boring. The Flash season 1 and 2 was decent, and then season 3 it again got really boring. And then unfortunately both of those series went very, very political and got really, really boring because I watched these shows to not be political at all. So that was really stupid. I've already commented you on why Supergirl was so bad. It was, some episodes are great, but it's all just about how girls are better, and it's just really, really annoying that they have to bash you in the face with these facts. Because if you don't agree, you're just this awful, terrible human being, and they kind of keep doing that kind of stuff. So it's just really, it gets old overall. But the main issue with the stories for DC TV shows now is the fact that a lot of the characters in the beginning of the series said, "I will never do this thing," and I'm like, "Yes, you're going to do this thing." And then in the most recent season, I believe a girl from both the Arrow and the Flash universe have said, "I will not do this thing." Well, in the most recent finale, I think, like, okay, I'll do it, and I'm like, "Well, I know you're going to. You were just there. I knew you were there for plot. It's just very annoying to see that you're only there for plot, and you have no other reason to be here because the hero kind of is into you, and that's about it." So it's just very cringeworthy, which is why, I mean, Marvel is just winning overall. It's good, I guess, but it's also kind of, I want DC to do better. It's like Trump. I want him to do better. So when they mess up, and I'm like, oh, I was hoping, I really wanted this to go well, and you fucked it up, and it's just very. It's very, very sad. I don't. And speaking of which, have you seen the new trailer for Infinity War there, Duff?
Yeah. I'm optimistic, but I actually enjoyed the Deadpool 2 trailer more.
I have not seen the second trailer yet. I'm curious to see that one. I'm sorry. Did I? I don't forget if I mentioned that. Have you seen Black Panther?
Yes, I have. We talked about it.
Okay, I thought we did. I just wanted to make sure. Cool, cool. That was good, good. So, I mean, are you, from what you've seen, I mean, you're cautiously optimistic about Infinity War then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. It's going to they're going to have to deal with the fact that they have so much character bloat going on. Um,
Something like,
and
24 characters, right? It's all right.
yeah, yeah, and what one thing which they keep on forgetting about is they've been giving their characters power ups, and then they tend to forget about them. So, for instance, Thor um, in his last movie, Odin tells Thor, "Are you the god of thunder or are you the god of hammers?" And he's like, "Well, I'm the god of thunder," and it's like, "Oh, he's way more powerful." And then it's like, okay, so he never needed Mjolnir then. Mjolnir was just a tool to help him learn how to use his powers. What they've done in Infinity War is they go and they get him to make a brand new hammer. And it's like, but wait, 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 wait. I thought he wasn't the god of hammers. I thought he was the god of thunder. And so why is he going backwards in terms of his character progression?
That's fair. That's fair. Well, I mean, yeah, and I agree that you've got the issue of all the, what was it? It's like seven Avengers characters, seven Guardians characters, and then you've got Thanos. And uh, I mean, unless this movie's 3 hours long, then I don't know how they're gonna squeeze people into it. I don't know. Do you think that's fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. And once again, they're going to have to deal with so many characters and playing around with them because technically, a new Thor wiped the floor with Hulk in the arena, right? After he went God mode. How is Hulk going to be in any way, shape, or form a threat to Thanos if Thanos could wipe the floor with Thor and presumably Banner because they were all on the same ship? So it's like, how are we going to make it so that them defeating Thanos is in any way believable, right?
Yeah, that's well. Have you seen or read any of the comics about the Infinity War type?
Oh, oh yeah. And well, that's the thing is, I understand the continuity. Like Thanos is basically a universe-ending villain, and whenever they have to beat him, they have to go really sideways in really clever ways. But the thing is, Reed Richards currently isn't in continuity, and he's the number one Thanos killer. That and Squirrel Girl, but I don't think they're bringing Squirrel Girl into continuity yet.
Oh, see, I know I know who that is. I don't I've not read the entire comic. I do know about the characters, but isn't what just to make sure I'm correct, isn't Reed Richards supposed to be the smartest Marvel character in the world?
One of them, yeah, yeah. He is infinitely smart. He's smarter than Tony Stark, but at the same time, he's he's not good at everything. It's just that he can think really deeply about a lot of things in a lot of really abstract ways. But yeah, yeah, no, it's they're currently not part of continuity either. So Fantastic Four can't save the day.
Yeah, and I'm kind of happy because there's just well that was I discussed this last night too with my friends. They talked about how many characters there'd be, and they goes, well, there are too many because they're gonna add the sidekicks. I'm like, dude, I don't think they're gonna have a time to add all. I think they're gonna have a hey, by the way, dude, you're my sidekick. Go help me out in this small way. Okay, bye. And they're gonna have to do that a lot because we don't need to have every sidekick there because people aren't gonna care. They're gonna forget. And I mean, just I think what we had it was hard to get everyone on screen for Civil War. Now we're adding what 10 to or more characters given Guardians to this movie, and it's, although I do look forward to the fact that I think Thanos actually is going to be a good um now it'll be a good villain. I hope it's not like too OP. I mean, I kind of want him to be really strong because always they've been building up to this giant character who's supposed to be, this basically a god without the crystals, and so him gaining the crystals is supposed to make him basically invincible and stuff. So I hope he's a good challenge. At the same time, I'm wondering how this will end because I've also been told that there's going to be Avengers 4, and how are they going to make sure that because they've already said they're not going to make Avengers Part 1 and 2. So I'm very curious to see how they're gonna end this one to either um, keep the progression towards the fourth movie, or is the fourth movie much going to be basically okay? Thanos doesn't matter. We're done with him now, and that kind of stuff. So it'd be interesting to see how all the the story arcs work out there. But anyway, moving back to what you were saying before, I take it you liked the Deadpool 2 trailer overall.
Yeah, yeah, no, I've liked the way that they've been treating and we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Cool. I haven't seen it yet, but I will look forward to that one. I saw the first trailer and I thought that was pretty funny overall, which was nice. So hopefully they do it justice. And I mean, it sounds like with Ryan Reynolds at the helm, I think that they're going to be able to give it the show it deserves, which would be great. And hopefully, we'll see. We've got Infinity War, Wonder Woman 2, a bunch of other sequel movies coming out this year, and then I think I don't know what they're gonna do because I think all the actors are about done with their contracts. I mean, they're gonna have to revamp X-Men, Marvel, all those characters and stuff. Which I don't know. Have you heard much about that by chance, there, Jeff?
Yeah, they're gonna have to have a hard reboot at some point, just because actors are aging out, and you can't get around that sort of thing. So we'll see how they do it. Hopefully they do it well.
I would agree. All right. Well, that was a bit of a tangent that I didn't mean to go on, but that was much more fun than talking about the depressing media. So I appreciate the your indulgence there. Um, anyways, I think we should leave it on a better note there. So guys, go watch Netflix series, Marvel shows on Netflix. I think that we should endorse that a whole lot. And that kind of thing. Hopefully, world and media things get better, but things are crazy. Whatever else now. So any last thoughts there, Duff?
Let's hope Infinity Wars lives up to the hype.
Yes, I agree. Let's hope that. I mean, I hope it's long and worth our time, and they do a good job. But I think that they've got a decent track record. It can't be worse than DC. So let's hope it's better than that. Anyway, guys, thank you. Hopefully you had a good time, and we'll see you next week. All right, say goodbye, Duff.
Have a great evening, everyone.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.